you so much for everyone attending this first workshop that I hope that we can repeat uh, next year. I think that it would be interesting to listen from you because as you saw during the day, I mean, critical thinking and the development of other skills, effective communication, data literacy, etc., uh, are key for the learning process of our students, particularly because these are skills that they are requiring outside to solve problems, to really find a job, to be engaged in the technological change, etc. And as our colleagues show, first, it is possible to teach it. Yes. It is easy. No. Are many willing to do so? Well, I mean, that is divided. There are some that are willing, some that are more reluctant. So I guess that it would be good to hear from the audience your main takes from the conference, your doubts, hesitations, criticisms, probably, or lessons that you would like to share to wrap it up the session. So the floor is open to anyone that would like to share some final thoughts on this issue. For example, I would start with a part at the bottom because there are the young people that are working or trying to develop these skills themselves for their jobs, for their experience as young researchers. I mean, you are the ones that have been pushing, at least at me as a faculty, try to improve the development of these skills. And you yourself are trying to do so in your work, in your learning experience. So if you have to share what you got from the conference, I would appreciate it. So anyone of that three persons that they know that I'm referring to, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Um, well, we have been listening and trying to discuss several things. First, I think that when we work, well, one of the things that we work on at the initiative is basically trying to find skill gaps in different states and trying to assess how to develop them in different states in Mexico. We have worked with Chihuahua, with Oaxaca, and we often find critical thinking. But one of the first steps that we find is that people do not have the same language when we're discussing skills, particularly, for example, businesses and school. And that is something that it's really relevant to create a common taxonomy onto how do we understand collectively a skill. And I think that also happens with critical thinking. So we were trying to define, because as we saw when we were, for example, seeing the steps in critical thinking, we could just make them so simple that they sound just like a rational agent, right? So we are people that are trying to compare different options and organize, decide, and take decision into them. But that is just like being a rational person. What goes beyond that makes critical thinking? And we thought that it's basically this part that, like when you are taking decisions day to day, you have certain heuristics to make these, how you say, like shortcuts to process information, and they take information. So basically, critical thinking is going against those shortcuts and trying to see that there is other information that we can take into consideration to take a decision. So that is something that we were thinking on how to define critical thinking beyond just this rationality and everything. And I think that is why I think that breaking it into a process is something that is really relevant, because basically, when we integrate AI into the tool set that students have, it just becomes another heuristic that they can use to take a shortcut into doing the things that they were not good at doing. For example, writing, doing an essay, trying to understand a problem. So it's just another way to take a shortcut. So the way in which we can like use or make easier for the student to see that there are other tools rather than AI is to help them learn the process onto how to create something. Often teachers, when I was, for example, a student, well, I continue to be a student, but now at a master's degree, when I was in my bachelor's degree, often teachers just come on and tell you, okay, you have to do an essay, it's just 15 pages and that's it. They don't tell you how to do the essay, how to do each part of the process, what does an essay entail. So you don't have the tools and you have to go look for them. And you had to do that when I was in my bachelor's degree. But now students have the same request by teachers, but now have another heuristic to actually do that, which is telling ChatGPT, do the essay for me. So I think that the work that teachers should be doing right now is something that we were trying to do exactly in Marco's class, is try to go step by step on the creation of for example, an essay. So the first part was trying to construct a single argument. So then we go to constructing the critique of the argument, then trying to construct a certain argument, presenting the argument, and hearing the rebuttal from other students. So that part helps to create the tools that are necessary for students to see that it's easier for them to create it than to delegate it to AI. And I think that's like such an interesting part of breaking the process methodologically that I think works with the 7 steps, for example, of critical thinking. That would be my take on everything I've seen today. Pablo, do you want to say something?
Yeah, the other thing that we have done in Marco's class, because one thing is what Ruben said, like breaking apart the process to really give students feedback at all times throughout the process that they are, the cognitive process that they are following. And we're very clear that we're not an anti-technology class. We're very, pro-technology, but using it in the right way to foster their learning, right? So we're very clear on the motivations on why they can't use AI for the first deliveries, and that's because we need students to have that productive struggle, that friction at the start where they don't necessarily understand the whole concepts. They can't really make sense of the connections across the readings and across the different themes that we're trying to present. But it's important for them, like we heard, to live in that uncertainty for a little bit while they struggle to make these connections, because they can't make something out of nothing, right? They can't just consume the final product and learn by that. They need to do the whole process, and by that, they can actually make the connections by themselves. And once they have done that, then we can use artificial intelligence to foster or enhance that understanding and their thinking, because now they can actually analyze what the artificial intelligence is telling them, right? They don't take it at face value, because if they just ask the AI, do this assignment for me, do this essay, construct this argument, and they haven't made the cognitive effort to actually understand what they are being presented with, then they're just going to take it at face value. They won't know if the artificial intelligence is hallucinating or if they are just, I don't know, getting artificial intelligence slop that is going to be the same across the entire class. We actually did a very interesting exercise where we asked students to present arguments, 2 arguments. One that was actually suggested by Doris, one argument constructed entirely by them, and one argument constructed entirely by AI. And what we did was we presented, like, these are the arguments that you constructed, and you could see that they were imperfect, but they were unique, right? Each student had his or her own take. And then we sort of compared them with the artificial intelligence arguments, and they were basically the same thing. They all sounded the same, they said the same, and it was just very lifeless and very dull. And I think that helped us sort of get our point across as to why it's important to, at the start, not use artificial intelligence and then just use it as sort of an intellectual sparring partner as opposed to like a generator.
Thank you so much. So I don't know. Okay, so, but the questions, do you have them, or? Okay. So go ahead, questions, comments? Well, I think. Well, yes, Claudia.
No. ¿Ah? Me pongo de pie. No, first of all, I want to thank all the speakers. I think it has been a tremendously valuable and interesting discussion and presentations. I think we can all agree that we've been learning a lot and thinking, no, and developing our critical skills also, listening to all the points of views on these issues. I think that as Marco said, I hope this is the first of several meetings on this issue, because there are many things that have been put on the place are not I don't think they're the final take. I think we're leaving with a lot of questions also, no? And I just jotted down some of the things that for me remain like big questions, like interesting questions to pursue. And one of them has to do with what we began talking about with Doris and with Kaya's definitions of what is critical thinking. And I think it's a tremendous advance what you guys are doing. But of course, questions remain, because there are so many different visions of what critical thinking covers. I was particularly struck by the Ibero's presentation on the focus on as part of critical thinking, the ethical part and the moral judgment. And I was wondering whether when we think about critical thinking, does it have to be anchored on moral judgment, on ethical values? Can we teach one thing without thinking about the other, without teaching the other? And that's an open question that for me remains from what I've heard today. Also, what your students were saying, no, the issue about the productive struggle, and while we can find ways of making use of AI, and I think Carlos was also saying about the use in prepa and in the earlier stages of learning. Should we be using AI when we haven't developed the skills? No, and I agree with the vision that AI is tremendously useful when you already have the skills, but not to replace them when you haven't developed them yet. At least I think that's one thing to think about. Another thing that struck me and that I thought was tremendously valuable was Michael's example. I really liked it. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting on your proposition, Michael, is in this exercise of when you ask students to define the problem. I think that education has been so much focused on teaching problem solving. And I think we should start by teaching them, to figure out what's the problem out there. It's and that's a position where we are constantly in. We live in a very complicated world with so many things happening. And where do we start? What's the problem? How can we solve it? And I think that's really one of the things related to AI. I think we have to define what's the problem. What's the problem with critical thinking? No. Do we have a problem? What's the scope of the problem? And what aspects are there problems? And so I think that this discussion today is also an invitation to think about it, no? How can we put borders to what we think is the problem? How can we define it? How can we frame it? How can we limit it, etc.? So I think there are many more issues. I didn't jot them down quickly enough to present them here, but I just want to show express my appreciation for leaving us with these questions, for initiating a conversation that I hope we can continue. So thank you, Marco. Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Bob. And thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Thanks. Just very briefly following on what Claudia just mentioned, And I really want to take advantage that our American friends are here because, I mean, I have been going to many U.S. academic circles. I mean, I'm a political scientist by formation, and one of the things that surprised me, I mean, there is this expectation that the best universities in terms of the research is in the US. No, I mean, yes, there are some European, but that the standard has been in the US. And what caught my attention, I was telling that to Doris, in this super large conference that is the American Education Research Association meeting, there were, I mean, yes, several panels on artificial intelligence, etc., but basically one on really discussing if universities are really developing the skills that they required. And I mean, I studied at Duke, my PhD, and I was asking Doris, and I said, okay, so how many universities are using CLA Plus? And there are very few, and obviously you are the good example. Why do you think that there is the reluctance of Duke, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, I mean, like the big ones, to go and take these kind of assessments? I mean, I guess that is kind of arrogance to say, no, we have our own model and we are sure that we are learning, or they are afraid to see what they find out with these kind of assessments. I'm not really sure what is behind that. And particularly what is for me even more puzzling is that if there is a place where there is a growing debate on the value of a college degree, it's in the US. I mean, you see the press and all the newspapers and the reports in PBS, NBC, whatever, everybody's discussing that there is a growing skepticism by young people, particularly because it's so expensive that if it's worth it to be pursuing a college degree in the US. So under those circumstances, you would be expecting that the leadership, the presidents of the universities will be pushing their institutions to have better assessments, to take seriously how to improve the training of the faculty. And my understanding, because I have several colleagues in Johns Hopkins, UCLA, Brown University, etc., sincerely, I don't listen too much about training for the faculty. I mean, publish, the ones that are research universities. Maybe there is a little bit more concern if you are a liberal arts college, but that's it. So I would like if you could share, I'm sure that you have thought critically on those issues. So very briefly, if you could tell us, what do you think about that?
I think you said the answer, and it's the incentive system within the institution at a research university. I love my faculty colleagues who are primarily focused on research. I love being around people who are that smart and that dedicated to a stream of research for a lifetime. But the incentive system that they're following rewards that. What I love that we've done at Texas A&M, and I'm sure this is true at other places, is there is a very healthy dose of non-tenured faculty that do go to the trainings to learn to be better teachers. They are the first ones to show up when we start talking about teaching ethics or teaching critical thinking or teaching communication skills. We have crafts people as instructors who are not the researchers. And the fact that we have both of those, and I know a lot of institutions have this, who gets all the press, who gets all the accolades? Well, it's the researchers, because that's what the institution is actually set up to do. But just below that, or just beneath the surface of that, what the students are most commonly interacting with are those tradespeople that care about the craft of teaching, and they probably had their lives changed by higher education, and they want to give that back to those students. So I'm actually encouraged by what we see. It's just not the stuff that makes the headlines. but it is the stuff that changes those students' lives. So my answer is, like, what do we do about it? We continue to encourage that layer of craftspeople, tradespeople, instructors, non-tenured faculty, to keep getting better at what they do. Because if you ask the student after they've left the university who had the impact on them, it's probably mostly those faculty more than the researchers. But that's not what we're paying the research to do, so that's okay. So I think you recognize the incentives in the system, accept them, and then work in the places where it might matter. And to me, that's the tradespeople. And sorry, I hope that's not reductive, like, to you. It's not, is it? Like, tradespeople. I'm a tradesperson. Oh, okay, okay. He disagrees with me. So that's what I think.
You go first.
Well, I don't want to stop that train over there if that's where it's going. I don't want to sit in the middle here, too. So, I mean, I come from a university who cared about this. And so I don't have a lot of affiliation with other institutions, and so I can't speak for them, but it also really kind of matters what the institution values, right? Purdue, certainly an R1 institution, cares about research, much like A&M and other institutions, but under our last administration, there was a lot of value in teaching. Yes, we do research, but we also have 50,000 students that we need to teach. Right, and so how do we make that better? And there was a really a really strong push for that. And not that our new administration doesn't care about it, it's just de-emphasized to replace the research. And how do we look in the eyes of the American Association for Universities and whatnot? So there's certainly that pressure to research, to publish, and so that you're looking good against everyone else. And so if that's what the administration values, then that's where we're going to go, right? And so I'm with Michael here with, I'm in the classroom, I'm not doing research, and so I have the freedom to experiment and do these sorts of things because my time is not consumed by research. And, thank God for that, honestly. Nothing against researchers by any means, but that's just not my lane. And so, I value that, not that other researchers don't value it. It's just, they're consumed, right? You mentioned other institutions and, maybe they're feeling like they do it better or whatnot, and maybe they do. There's some evidence to that, especially in like the accreditation side of things, right? Like MIT doesn't do like ABET accreditation because what they're doing is, well, I suppose what they consider to be superior to that. Right? So they don't even have ABET accreditation for a lot of their engineering programs, right? But they're cranking out really good engineers, right? And so is it bad that they're not doing that or not buying into that? I don't know, right? Maybe it's just not as explicit, and I'm not saying that they don't need, the CLA or they don't need the CAE, I'm not saying they don't need that stuff, but, they have a rationale and they have a pretty strong pedigree. Do their students critically think? Maybe, right? But there's just really no evidence to that. So, I don't think it's a complete apathy, or I don't think it's right to say that they just don't care. But they just potentially value, or they see it as being superior in their own way. And maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But I'm happy to be at an institution where they value critical thinking and academic rigor, and in the pursuit of providing an education that is well-rounded, also includes humanities, is largely STEM focused, right? But we also need the critical thinking aspect. So I appreciate that a lot, and I hope to be able to continue that at Purdue, whether it's me spearheading that, because I'm just a very small cog in this whole operation, which kind of piggybacks off of something that I feel is not necessarily a concern, but and not necessarily a question, but I don't think anybody in this room needs to be convinced that critical thinking is important, right? It's how do we equip us to be the people who get other people to see the value in it, right? Because I think lots of these especially my institution and other places, I think it's going to be important for us to be equipped with the skills to be like, hey, you're doing this. How do we make it better? Right? How do we make it more explicit? So how do we get equipped with the knowledge to be able to go and carry that message out? Because CAE is not coming every single day, to find faculty to do that, right? We're there all the time. So I think that's something that maybe going forward would be very, very valuable for all of us.
Thank you so much.
I honestly don't even remember Marco's question anymore, but I will. I remember the disagreement. I remember how I disagree with Mike, and I'm going to disagree with Mike, and I'm going to say Americans are able to disagree with each other, and we'll still go have a beer later. That still can't happen because when you watch the news, I agree with Mike that there's a tiered structure, that the research-focused faculty focus on the research, and the teaching-focused faculty focus on the teaching. And those of us focused on teaching are the ones that are going to be in a room like this going, how can we be better? No offense to Yanni, who is like master research guy, right? Like there's a clear, in America, a clear hierarchy. Here's the point I disagree with Mike, that it can be very, very easy to create a disincentive for the teaching faculty because all the fame and accolades and money and everything goes to the researchers. And so that on my side of the building, that has actually occurred more often than not. And so you do have to recognize the system. So the point of disagreement is you don't have to accept the system. So in a room like this, where we're preaching to the choir, everyone agrees that critical thinking is important. That's great. We're now going to leave this room and go to the next room where we're the one person sitting in the room going, we could teach better. Is that okay if we just teach? But no, I got to do the research. Like, no, you have to do the research. There's a better way to teach. Let's acknowledge that teaching is a skill. Let's acknowledge that teaching faculty bring a very valuable component to, the tiered structure can create a disincentive. I think I said that right? Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much for addressing the question, because I really was puzzled of seeing this debate in the U.S. and trying to see what was your take. I just want to once again thank first our colleagues from the CA, Doris, Bob, for helping us to put together this workshop, to my team, to Sandra, Carla, and the rest of the team that have been working very hard to put together this. I just want to thank them. And to all of you, particularly the speakers that accepted from other universities in Mexico, in the US, and here at home, I'm convinced, and from Finland, I'm convinced that we can, as we tried today, to share experiences of what's going on, what is working, what is not, because the challenge over there, it's still big. But I guess that by sharing pedagogical lessons, we can improve our results in the classroom. Thank you so much.